Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ismail Mohammed, and I'm the Director for the Center for Creative Arts at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. It's my pleasure to welcome you this evening to the launch of the Jomba MASIHAMBISANE archives that we produced during the course of this year. The Center for the Creative Arts is located in the School of the Arts at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. We are home to 4 major festivals: the Jomba Dance Festival, the Time of the Writer Festival, the Poetry Africa Festival, and the Durban International Film Festival. During the past year, we've also launched the Artfluence Human Rights Festival and the Cabaret and Beyond Festival. When the national lockdown was promulgated last year, we had no idea that we'd be working in the online space for almost 19 months. Whilst we may not have been able to gather together in the theatre spaces and gallery spaces, the online space has been a dynamic platform to continue to bring us together. The Jomba Dance Festival has been one of the festivals at the forefront of being able to build an archive of the work that we've been able to accumulate over the last 19 months. Tonight, we're here to celebrate and to enjoy and to be able to have access to the archive that's been curated by Leanne Lutz, the curator of the Jomba Dance Festival. The colloquium that we presented would not have been possible if it wasn't for the ardent support that we received from the leadership of the University of KwaZulu-Natal, to whom we're incredibly grateful. And we do have the Dean of the School of the Arts, Professor Nobuhle Hlongwe, who is going to be addressing us shortly, and Professor Yanni Smit, the Director for the Institute for Humanities, who've also supported us in being able to acquire the grant from the National Institute for Humanities and Social Sciences to present the colloquium and to be able to build this archive, which Leanne will introduce us to tonight. We all know that in a tough economic climate, it's difficult to be able to access grants, to be able to do meaningful work. And for this, we're incredibly grateful to the National Institute for Humanities and Social Sciences, who not only provided us with a working grant for a catalytic research project, but provided us an extended grant to be able to launch the Jomba MASIHAMBISANE colloquium. Our gratitude to them is enormous. But I'm going to hand you over to the Dean of the School of the Arts, Professor Nobuhle Hlongwe, to briefly address us. Professor, over to you. Thank you.
Very much, Dr. Ismail Mohammed, for the opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Nobuhle Hlongwe. I'm the Dean and the Head of the School of Arts at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. As we launch the Jomba MASIHAMBISANE Dialogue Digital Archive today, I want to sincerely thank initially the entire CCA team under the leadership of Dr. Ismail Mohammed, the entire curatorial team under the directorship of Dr. Leanne Lutz, but more importantly, our funders, the NIHSS, for supporting the Center for Creative Arts at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and most importantly, for supporting this particular festival that is Jomba, for their outstanding work that they have been doing over the years. And it is exciting to know that in just 1 year, Jomba has received 2 accolades, one from the NIHSS and also one from the Business Art South Africa, in recognition of the outstanding artistic work that they have been doing over the years. With just these few words, I wish the team well in all the future endeavor. We're looking forward to 2022 and for more exciting work that we'll be seeing in the digital platforms. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Hlongwe. And of course, those 2 awards are real worthy of celebration. It's the NIHS Awards for Best digital creations during the past year, and the Business Arts South Africa Award, recognizing the advocacy work that Jomba has been doing in the contemporary dance space. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, I'm going to hand you over for a brief address by the director of the Institute for Humanities at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, Professor Johannes Smit. Professor Smit, over to you.
Good evening, colleagues. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and very welcome to this very important event in the life of our college, but also in the life of our university. Professor Nobusile Shlongwa, thank you for your excellent leadership of the School of Arts, and also for Dr. Ismail Mahomet for raising the funds from the National Institute of the Human and Social Sciences, and also the team that have worked very hard to bring the project on this archive to fruition. Thank you so much for the invite and also for this event in the life of our college and also in the life of our university. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to share a few thoughts on what I have proposed to say something about, namely cultural intimacy in the public sphere. Now, as we know, we live in a time where academics and many of our intellectual leaders regard it as very important to be part of some kind of activist grouping, or even to describe themselves as activists for certain cause or causes. And we know that the notion of agency has become very important also in the very different forms of transformation that our society is going through and that we are experiencing. Not only because we are part and parcel of the post-colonial state that we call the Republic of South Africa, but also the recent waves of protests and developments that we've seen around the decolonization movement, which is so important for us to contemplate and also to conceptualize and also to implement some of these insights into the knowledge transformation systems that we have in the university. So people who see themselves as taking part in these events with certain forms of agency, certain forms of activism that drive them, these are all important parts of how our society transforms itself to hopefully a more equitable society. Now, with regard to the notion of cultural intimacy in the public sphere, we do know that in the political arena itself, it is very easy to understand. Because in the political arena, political parties have certain commitments, certain manifestos that they commit themselves to. So to have agency for the political party or the political formation that you form part of, that is part and parcel of what is expected of you. But then we also have in the public sphere certain institutions that need to take some form of distancing attitude towards what is happening in society, and also to represent what is happening in society in our institutions. Now, on the one hand, and normally we have the example of what is happening in our law courts, where judges have to distance themselves sufficiently so that the cultural identification with the people who appear in their court does not interfere in their judgments. And there has been many studies over the world, especially in the human rights discourse, highlighting these kind of issues. But on the other hand, what we have to do at the university is also to distance and objectify what is happening in our society. And we do that in our human sciences, in our social sciences, and we try to study these forms of interactions, even as we see ourselves as having agency and as having and being part of certain forms of activism for justice, for social justice, for peace, for security, for freedom, and so on. So these are important aspects of what is happening and what are happening in the public sphere. Lastly, let me turn to drama. I'm not a dramatist. I have not studied dramatology. I've read something about drama because my doctorate is in Southern African literature and languages. So I have read and I have attended some of the drama and the dramas that have been produced in Southern Africa, also with different forms of sometimes political agency or certain forms of hope to influence society in some form or another. So we're really looking forward to the very significant project that you have launched, namely to bring out the archive and to develop the archive that we have and that has played such a significant role, not only in Durban at Howard College campus, but also here in Pietermaritzburg with our drama department. So my hope is, and I would like to say also that I wish that the effects and also the forms of activism that we would find in this archive will have continuing effects for good as we go forward in our society. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Smith, for your message. It's incredibly important to us, and it continues to inspire us to build the kind of work that we're doing. As I sit here in almost a ESCOM blackout, and before I go completely out, I'm going to hand you over to Leanne Lutz. But I wouldn't do justice if I did not put this in context, that for the last 23 years, Leanne Lutz has been the anchor that has held together the Jomba Contemporary Dance Festival in South Africa. It remains as the oldest and the longest surviving, or rather the longest surviving contemporary dance festival in South Africa. And while it may be located in Durban and be a South African festival, it is globally connected. As you've heard earlier, it's brought us wonderful acclaim from both the National Institute for Humanities and Social Sciences and also the Business Arts South Africa. But there are many artists who have grown through the Jomba Contemporary Dance Festival and have built national and international careers. At a time when the arts sector has been incredibly affected over the last 19 months, with all theatres being shut down, Leanne took it upon herself and her team to be able to present 2 festivals in the online space and to add a colloquium to our program. Now that takes an enormous amount of passion, vision, and leadership. Leanne, thank you to you and to your team. And as I hand over to you, I also want to thank all the technical team that's working today on this particular launch, because by the time I get right to you, I will be in the complete blackout with ESCOM. So over to you, Leanne.
Thank you so much, Ishmael. I just wanted to say a really big warm welcome to everyone. We took as our theme this year the kind of politics of intimacies. And I feel like I'm in a wonderful intimate space with colleagues who I care about and who've cared very deeply about the festival and about our dialogue. So I want to just really say thank you again to Ishmael, the director of the CCA, for his amazing work and his generous insights, guidance, and his support in what we are doing. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. So just to acknowledge your beautiful part in all of this. I want to thank Prof. Nobotle Hlongwa, our Dean, for being here and taking time to attend the event. And also to Prof. Smith for his wonderful support and for the very inspiring words that you've offered us. Really important and means a lot to us. So I thought what I would do tonight is maybe just frame a little bit around what we hope the MASIHAMBISANE Jomba dialogues and the archive will become. But I kind of frame it in the sense of really looking at what it means to be an archivist or to kind of think about knowledge. So historians like Anderson and Hart have argued that archives cannot be neutral. They are sites of contestation of power. And they say that selecting for an archive, how it is presented, who is allowed to see it, all the ways in which power relationships are generally maintained in those notions of archive. So these theories around the idea of archive are closely bound up with the notions of context, politicization, legitimacy, and inequality. For example, who has access to the artifacts? whose voice is the loudest or the strongest, whose histories and memories are chosen to represent or stand as a symbol for a movement or even for a moment in time. So for Jomba and with these Jomba MASIHAMBISANE dialogues, we aim to dislodge how knowledge is generated, how it's owned, how it's valued, and how it's distributed via our open and what we believe is an open, accessible, and free platform. We also aim to honor non-traditional forms of knowledge production that include, amongst what I hope is an evolving agenda for all of us, ideas of performance, the body as archive, discussion panels, activisms, and various oral traditions that are specific to South Africa and to our African continent. Michelle Pickover writes on the advances of digitization in the archival spaces, and she says that there's also a kind of altered sense of how we think about knowledge that is, and how it's disseminated in the digital age. And she's interestingly argued that non-digitized knowledges also are rendered invisible. So working in the context of South Africa and African orality, and of course, particularly in terms of performance and in terms of dance, these things are often not digitized. So we aim to use these Jomba festivals and the colloquium space to document and record valuable performances, dialogues, conversations that look to shared ideas of how society, academy, journalists, practitioners, how we value the arts. And in our case, the evolving field of physical performance. These framing ideas of the archives are challenged. And we at the CCA take up this challenge and Jomba for grappling with our own curating of festivals and a sense of how we think about what are the themes or what are the notions of how we deliver our colloquium. We're taking on the role of the archivist, one that cannot be neutral or controlled by a central narrative. Instead, we find that our roles must be that of an activist, fighting to give a voice to the voiceless. Kova also argues that activists are agents of change and that non-state archives should be instruments of empowerment. And for me, this is the frame in which we hope to continue to operate. So in launching our first 2020 online edited colloquium proceedings and in setting up the Jomba MASIHAMBISANE digital archive tonight, we claim the idea of our work, whether it's artistic, academic, or archival, as creating a community of change agents. So to this end, it is my great pleasure, a spirit of community and in a spirit of shared intimacy, to celebrate and introduce an incredible steering and editorial committee who have worked alongside me for the Jomba MASIHAMBISANE dialogues, and I'm hoping will continue to work as we move into 2022. Each one of them have contributed knowledge, and more especially, they've contributed kindness, from editorial input to mentoring young writers, to literally sitting with spell checks. This is a group of people who I wish to celebrate this evening. And I know that South Africa is presently experiencing quite heavy load shedding, so that there are a couple of us who aren't here. I'm going to introduce them nonetheless and just ask them to say a few words, and I'm going to go in alphabetical order, which I know upsets Claire terribly because she's always first. But I'd like to start by introducing Claire Craighead, who is she's presently studying her PhD, and she's doing work around dance, the body, and post-human identities. She's a lecturer at the Drama and Production Studies Department at the Durban University of Technology. I've also worked alongside her for the last maybe 10 years as she's run the Jomba Luma writing residency for Jomba, and it's under her leadership. The journal is now delivered in a dual language, both English and isiZulu, which I think is a huge achievement. So Claire, thank you so much for everything that you've done, and over to you.
Thank you, Leanne. And hello, colleagues, and to anyone who's watching. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. So our brief was to offer something or some words on what the MASIHAMBISANE dialogues have meant to us. And I think particularly in a time of social isolation, the capacity to meet as a dance community, and also to pick up on what Leanne has been saying, a community also of activists that seek to challenge knowledge production, to challenge how knowledge is rendered, and the importance of having an archive that is freely accessible, that will and that has the capacity and the intention to grow. So it doesn't just sit as an artifact or an historical artifact, that it is a living thing that will continue to have an impact and to have voices added into it. So you know, from me as a dance scholar, in fact, Leanne was my supervisor for my earlier qualifications. Being able to be part of this incredible team, sometimes I guess it feels a bit like imposter syndrome, to be able to be part of an incredible team and to not only contribute, but to learn also while contributing. And thank you, Leanne, for acknowledging the Kaluma, because that really also is a really big interface for me. And I would be remiss if I didn't also acknowledge where the Kaluma began. I took over from Adrian Sichel, who in and of herself is a massive dance archive for us in South Africa, in Durban, and also, you know, in terms of Jomba. And I think the MASIHAMBISANE dialogues, the archive, as well as the Kaluma, as I'm beginning also to frame it in an archival space. So those questions around who is represented, how is the representation there? And not only that, how is the dance served through that? And I think that the dialogues for me have really been in addition to this really incredible, this festival that I've grown up with. Jomba is kind of, it's in my blood, it's in my DNA. So for me, that's kind of, I think, where I'll leap off. But thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Claire, for your work. I think also as we move forward, I'm interested that you talk about the Kaluma as moving into an archival space. And one of the things I think we can discuss as we move forward is how the Kaluma starts to become part of the archive as well. And that's, I hope, a discussion that we can continue. So the next committee member is the beautiful David Tatanelo April, who I've known for many years of my life. And such a joy. We've worked together on many, many projects together. He's a man who inspires me. He's a director, a teacher, choreographer, lobbyist in the realm of South African dance and performance. He holds an MA in Cultural Policy and Management from Wits University. He's currently employed at the University of Pretoria, also in the School of the Arts, where he's involved in production logistics, lecturing arts administration and management, as well as movement and dance studies. He's a man who gives absolutely everything to every project he's involved in, and really grateful to have you on board. So handing over to David.
Unmute. It would be helpful to unmute. Thank you so much, Dr. Lutsiwe, for that beautiful introduction. I must say, having been part of this whole conversation has just been one of my dreams, actually, to see this thrust to have research and documentation available and accessible to artists, because what we tend to do, we often create, we don't document, we don't share our thoughts. So being part of the committee was just so special for me, because suddenly a lot of people were unearthing a lot of the information that's residing in them. So thinking about how they create, why they create, what is the relevance and impact, and most importantly, making sure that there's also an academic and also artistic thrust to all of this, because often we create and then we get lost in translation. So having everything documented, whether in digital form, and then most importantly now in writing, because as artists, we tend to show of ensuring and encouraging people to have this dialogue is so important for me, and then just in the overall context of the creative and cultural industries. And also this idea that now various universities can now start having a dialogue, because also within the team, you've got people who come from various universities and backgrounds. And then it also leads one to have this way. So having these kind of initiatives for me is almost like, okay, how can we think about documentation? How can you think about research differently? And then just have this beautiful shift in terms of what we need to be doing in terms of archiving and also making sure that there is something for the future generation to refer to. So thank you very much for making me part of this important conversation.
Thank you so much, David. I mean, I love the idea also of us.
And Ms. Leanne is frozen in time over there.
Am I frozen? Okay, so so thank you, David. I mean, one of the strengths of our steering committee and editorial committee is the cross-campus and cross-continent that we are representing many spaces, and the idea, of course, is that it's always about shared knowledge. And so thank you also for really holding us to that. Thank you so much, David. So the next person who was part of the committee is Gift Maravatsanga, who unfortunately is not with us. I've just got a message from him to say they're in very hectic load shedding. I just kind of introduce him because he is a part of the team. So Gift is from the University of Zululand, from the Drama and Theatre Studies department. He's a lecturer and also been the head of the program for many years. He's a multidisciplinary performer and artist, and his passion really is as a storyteller. He works profoundly in applied theatre mostly, and although he's not really a dance scholar, his voice was so necessary for us in terms of reminding us of a bigger discipline outside of just dance and to include the kind of performance studies. So it was really lovely to have him, and he will continue to work with us. And we just kind of acknowledge and thank him for being here and for being with us. And so I'm moving now to the next person, which is Dr. Sarah Lee Castellan. She's a performer, choreographer, and a researcher. She calls herself a dance nerd, which I always love. She's a reader in performing arts at the School of Arts and Creative Industries at the University of East London in the United Kingdom. Her dance research focuses on race, gender, sexuality, and nation in apartheid and post-apartheid South Africa. She looks at the politics of hybridity and the use of practice as research methodology. She serves on a number of boards, editorial boards and organizations such as the South African Dance Journal and also Hotfoot, which has published quite a lot of stuff about Jomba. So, and Sarah Lee is, of course, originally from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. So it's really lovely, even though she's living in London, it's really lovely to be connected to her and to the particular extraordinary activist work that she's doing. So Sarah, over to you.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say firstly that it's an honor to be part of this. And then the other thing is to say, like, I owe much to Leanne for giving me the fire. I owe much to Jomba and people like Wes and Claire. And then also I owe much to the CCA and UKZN for shaping me to be able to be, working in another university and kind of trying to address the limitations of knowledge about where I come from and the kind of dance practices that happen where I'm from. So I'm really honored to be part of it. And with all the things that have happened in the last 19 months, one of the beautiful things that happened is that I got to go home, but in the digital sense. So that's been really awesome for me. And Leanne, whilst you were speaking, I was reminded of a lecture that you gave me in 1995-6, and you spoke about, you were teaching us about spivak and speaking back. And then it's got me thinking about how what this archive's all about is that it's not just speaking back, it's speaking with. And it's actively not trying to speak for someone else or some other people or cultures and practices. And then this is where, like in the terms of the archive, it's here where the dance and the politics of the archive are addressed. So it's really being aware of who's doing the speaking as opposed to just playing with the power kind of operations. So thank you very, very much. It was an honor, okay, an absolute honor. And I got to connect with so many people. And also, to be perfectly blunt, I got to learn. And that's, to me, the most important thing, to be curious and to find out more. And I'm sure everybody else who comes across the archive, and I know I will be making it into all my reading list at my university and making it compulsory, but the fact that it's open access and also open in terms of our involvement and who comes to the table makes it absolutely awesome. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah Lee. It's been really a pleasure to work with you, and also for bringing your community. Sarah Lee was also instrumental in getting funding on her side through the University of East London to sponsor a young grads. Well, I think she's an undergrad student called Leonora, who was part of the admin team for the MASIHAMBISANE Dialogues. So also to thank University of East London for supporting and being part of us. So I'm going to move again. Tobila Mapanga is also part of the committee, but I think because of load shedding, I just see that she's been booted out. She might come back a little bit later on, but also wanted to introduce her and also to acknowledge the extraordinary work that she's been doing. So Toby is a Durban-based dance practitioner and a creative collaborator. She's an emerging writer. She's got the very interesting qualifications of a Bachelor of Commerce degree, where she majored in drama and information systems at Rhodes University. So she's worked in the both corporate and the artistic sector and is interested in how these two worlds kind of connect and prove beneficial to all who are involved. She, in 2019, finished her honours, and she came back and did her honours, and she's hoping to set out on a master's journey. Her kind of research focus is very much around Black women's bodies and the politics around that. And also I've been very fortunate to work very closely with her for 2020 and 2021. She's been the curator mentee for Jomba. So we're kind of also teaching skills around passing knowledge on and sharing knowledge. And it's a role that she will continue to take in 2022. So very happy to have her. Toby's also assisted on the administrative side, and really grateful for her input. So that's Toby, and maybe she joins us later. We can have a word. Then the final person that I'd like to thank and acknowledge is also a friend and a colleague and someone that I've known for many years, and that's Yvette Hutchison. Yvette is a reader and a professor in theatre and performance studies at the University of Warwick in the United Kingdom. Her research focuses on Anglophone African theatre, histories and narratives of memory, and how intercultural performance practices are challenged by ongoing post-colonial issues. She is the associate editor of the South African Theatre Journal and the African Theatre Series. And she's particularly loved and well known amongst us for the incredible work that she's done. And I think it's since about 2015 in setting up this extraordinarily profound African Women Playwright Network, which has seen the birth of many young artists across the continent as playwrights, theatre makers. She's assisted in creating dialogue platforms and spaces, and just a network for supporting the voices of African women. So it's been an absolute pleasure to have Yvette give her time and her energy and her kindness, incredible kindness in terms of the support for the MASIHAMBISANE Dialogue. So Yvette, over to you.
Thanks, Leanne. That feels way too generous, because it's been an incredible experience for me. I've loved it. Besides working with you, which is always super great, I met really incredible people on the steering committee, but also the people with whom we've worked in the field itself. So I am an imposter, much more so than Claire, because I'm not a dance scholar at all. So it's been very kind to have me with you, although I've been passionate because I've worked on archives for a long time, and the idea of embodied memory is really important for me, that memory doesn't just sit in our heads or in a building, but actually we hold it in our bodies, and the spaces between our bodies is really, really important. And I think COVID has flagged up real issues about being separated, isolated. It's also flagged up technological possibilities of connection And I think this particular colloquium has highlighted both the challenges of facilitating intimacy, but also new possibilities for intimacy, which I found really, really exciting. When I was meditating on what this has meant for me, I think two things in particular. One was the very humbling experience I had of being supposedly a mentor, although I learned as much, with a young dancer, Lucky Muketsi. And as I watched him develop his work, which was a response to COVID, but I worked with him on how to actually link his creative process with discourse around law and culture. And for us to have that conversation, we both learned so much. And it really highlighted the need for academics to collaborate with artists and for us to break down these binaries around, different kinds of thinking and ways of working. And that was really important for me. And I learned a lot in the process, and I'd like to keep doing that. The second thing, I was really honored to see how this was not just focused on Africa, but also incorporated scholars from India and Europe and the Americas. So it became a transnational conversation that was really powerful as we saw similarities, differences, different ways of thinking. And I was very honored to facilitate one of those conversations. And through that, I've made new connections for myself around my own thinking and work as well. So I think this is doing amazing connective work, conceptual work, creative work. And I hope this is just the beginning of something that's going to be awesome for any of us that work in embodied creative practices. So I'd like to thank you and the team, particularly the technological team, for this very amazing project, and long may it continue and be funded. I think it's something really worth investing in. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Yvette. Thank you so much. I think it's for me also just to acknowledge that although we as the editorial and steering committee are speaking today, the colloquium in the archives features a number of scholarly papers and a number of digital panels that were recorded and now on the archive to watch. So it's not just written papers. We're trying to find ways to create different kinds of archives. We also want to thank all the authors who sent in abstracts and willingnesses to actually participate as writers, as young academics. We had a range of seasoned academics writing and doing papers, but we also had young practitioners who wanted to find ways to articulate. And I think, thank you, Yvette, very much for articulating it. We kind of called it the guardian angel. We were going to be the guardian angels of certain young writers, and it for us is very beautiful to see those young practitioners begin to find a voice in the kind of historically secluded academic space. So we also thank all the authors for the time they put into the papers and for presenting. I also want to thank the Center for Creative Arts, the team behind us, particularly someone like Yenzi and Daba, who does the finances and has just kept a cool head around keeping us all on track. So to really acknowledge the team of the CCA. And then finally, of course, to end tonight, I'm going to hand over to Wesley Maheri, who's our technical genius, really, who's helped us deliver our online Jomba platforms these past 2 years. And without him, none of this would have been possible. So, I thank Ishmael so much for his kind words around the work that I've done. But in fact, none of it would have been possible if I didn't have Wesley standing next to me, telling me what is possible in terms of a digital space, and also in a state of really learning as we go along. So I want to also thank Wesley and acknowledge him as the person who has literally designed and implemented our digital archives and has given over a lot of time. So just to thank Wesley for that, and to kind of hand over now to Wes, because I know that he's made a beautiful presentation just to explain to us how we can access and find the archive. So over to you. Thank you.
The Center for Creative Arts at the University of KwaZulu-Natal and its Jomba Contemporary Dance Experience, with support from the NIHSS, launched its first inaugural 3-day dance colloquium, the Jomba MASIHAMBISANE Dialogues, from the 2nd to the 4th of June 2021, all online and for free. Featuring more than 30 participants from around the globe, the colloquium was hosted via Zoom and streamed to YouTube with the aim to support focused South African, and African diaspora dance scholarship and research in an accessible and community-driven manner, while supporting inventive ways of engaging dance and performance scholarship, practice, and practice-led research. We are now proud to release the colloquium proceedings in our digital archive, which can all be navigated via the Jomba website. Go to jomba.ukzn.ac.za and click on the MASIHAMBISANE Dialogues tab. Then click on the View Issue 1 button. Here you will be able to download the full proceedings as well as navigate separately through the keynote dialogues with video and downloadable transcripts, all the papers as separate downloads, and finally, a selection of recordings of some of the panel and workshop videos that will all remain available as part of our digital archive. We hope you enjoy and share widely the colloquium proceedings, and we look forward to seeing you for our second edition at the 2022 Jomba MASIHAMBISANE Dialogues.
Wow, thank you so much, Wes. Beautiful work. So I know that Ishmael is sitting in the dark because of load shedding, but I'm wondering if Ishmael, you would like to say the final words tonight.
Thank you. I'm going to do that in the kind of mini light that I have while I'm sitting in the Eskom blackout. Once again, thank you to the National Institute for Humanities and Social Sciences for a generous grant that allowed us to be able to take this work forward and to be able to make it accessible to a wider community. To you, Leanne, and to your entire team, thank you for your vision, your passion, your commitment, your dedicated hours of work to make it all happen. The entire team, that's the committee and the technical team, as well as your admin staff. And of course, in making this work possible, one can't forget the artists who inspire us, who give us a reason to exist, and who allow us to be critical and reflect on our society. Ladies and gentlemen, the archive is now launched. It's easy to access. Get onto the Jomba webpage. To Professor Hlongwa and the Professor Yanni Smith and the leadership at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, thank you for valuing the arts and for making a passionate investment in the arts as well. An investment in the arts is an investment in our society. Thank you very much to all of you.